There are growing fears that nuclear weapons could be used in the Iran war. That has brought renewed focus on that 2007 armed robbery or attempted armed robbery at South Africa's nuclear research site, Pelindaba. I speak to Dr. Kelvin Kemm, a member of the South African Council for the Non-proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction, the former chairman of the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, and currently the chairman of Strateq Holdings. Welcome, Dr. Kemm.
Thanks. Thank you for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Dr. Kemm, recap for us the Pelindaba incident.
It was a very mysterious incident. It happened quite a few years ago now, and some people broke in by coming through the fence. And they then went and got into the control room of the security of the site. It wasn't near the reactor or anything like that. And they had weapons. There were 4 of them armed, and it was at night. And there was a fellow on duty, and he had his girlfriend with him at the time. And they came in with guns, and they both got injured. The one fellow was shot, but survived okay. And it was quite a mystery. The security people were then called and so on and so forth. And that's what happened. Now, the odd part of it was they knew how to get in by putting pieces of cardboard into electrical contacts to override some of the high security around the fence. And it was quite mysterious. And people wondered what they were doing. It really couldn't have been anything tackling the serious nuclear stuff because they were still far away from getting anywhere near that. They only went to the tower where the security people sit during the night. But still, it was quite a strange thing. They took a laptop and a couple of other things, but it really was quite a mystery. I don't think any real satisfactory answers ever come out of it.
So it seemed like it was an inside job, but nobody was ever arrested. And the case has never been solved.
It would appear so, in the sense that they knew how the things worked. So somebody, either like an inside job or somebody told somebody how to override the security systems by putting bits of cardboard and electrical contacts and so on, because there's quite sophisticated defenses there, of course.
Now, the person who was shot sued Pelindaba because apparently security took over 20 minutes to arrive. Do you know what happened with that case?
No, I don't know the end result of all of it. I said it was quite a few years ago now, so I forget the details. But he was actually on duty as a security person. He was there with his girlfriend. So the fact that it took security a while to arrive, exactly why, I don't know. That was before my time there. But maybe what they would have done is gone and checked other things. If they got a call going directly to him, it was not necessarily the first priority. The first priority would have been having a look at other facilities. He was, after all, the security man himself, or in the security tower. They should have been in a position to defend themselves. In fact, they shouldn't have been able to get into the security tower. They did it by getting a stepladder from somewhere as well, which they also known as a stepladder was. And so the whole thing was a bit of a interesting situation by the end of the day. So actually what happened, luckily enough, no particular damage was done other than this fellow getting shot, which he recovered from. There was no large-scale damage or anything to the site to any of the systems there. So it's gone past into history now.
And how much enriched uranium is there now, Dr. Kemm?
There's quite a lot. I can't tell you what's there, but there's quite a lot. And so, yeah, that's about all I can tell you at the moment. What it is too is it's good quality material. South Africa did a good job in the past. You're no doubt going to mention where did it come from. And South Africa, under the pressure of the era before 1994, way back in the 70s, in fact, we started to develop the technique to enrich uranium. You need to enrich uranium because uranium, when it comes out of the ground, is 99.3% of an isotope called U-238, which is what you don't want. And the valuable one is only 0.7%. So what you want to do is increase the percentage of that 0.7 by taking the 238s and throwing them away, so to speak. And you do that up to a percentage of 5%. And that is what the uranium that Coburg runs on. Then there's the next level, which is about 10%, and that's the SMR, modern small modular reactor type range, up to 10 or 15. And then the international community way back made a decision that 20% was the no-go barrier for military and civilian. If you stay under 20, you're in the civilian ballpark. As soon as you pass the 20 mark, you're going towards military stuff, and you shouldn't be doing that unless you've got a very good reason to do. The Iranians currently have got apparently uranium at 60% enrichment, and that is what has been concerning the US and the Western world. Why are they sitting at 60 when they keep claiming that they are totally peaceful about it? And they got that. That's still not good enough for a weapon. We went way beyond that. And we did that initially because the fuel to Coburg and to the Safari reactor at Pelindaba was blocked by international sanctions. So the authorities at the time gave instructions for South Africa to ensure that we do not run out of nuclear fuel for the 3 nuclear reactors. And we didn't. We were in record time, we were able to completely create fuel for both the Safari reactor and the Coburg reactors. And we did that. And to do that, you have to enrich the uranium. But when we developed a completely South African process, a unique process, the vortex tube process. Then when we did it, we discovered, gee whiz, not only can we make the reactor grade enriched uranium, but if we keep going, it goes up and up and up to weapons grade uranium. So when that was reported to the cabinet said, let's just carry on and do it. So they carried on and developed the weapons grade uranium. So that's what happened at the time. The stimulus was because the fuel had been cut off by the Western world.
Dr. Kemm, with everything that we are hearing currently about police and political capture, how safe is South Africa's enriched uranium?
Chris, it's very safe. It's in a secret place. Only a couple of people know exactly where it is. In fact, very few people know it even exists, but the international community knows. The spy networks of the world know. So what I'm saying now is not going to be news to any of them. And it's within a large site, 2,000 hectare site, which has got a high security fence around it. It's also got multiple buildings, some 150 buildings on the site, and it's in a building, or it's in somewhere, and very secure. It's also not that big in terms of volume. It's a lot in terms of enriched uranium, but it's not as if it's truckloads or something like that. To make a nuclear weapon, you need a piece about like that. It's not big enough to put in the back of a bakkie. So a piece like that will give you an almighty bang. So you can imagine, it's common knowledge now too that South Africa actually produced 6.5 nuclear devices. And FW de Klerk became president when they were halfway through the 7th. And de Klerk at the time said, look, going for nuclear weapons is not going to get us where we want to go. Let's declare to the world that we have it. Let's make peace about this issue, shake hands, sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a treaty that says we undertake not to make nuclear weapons or use them anyway. And he then ordered stop today. And that today was in the middle of the 7th weapon. They literally told the guys, put your pencils down now and walk out the front door, which they did, and they locked the door. And I've been inside there, and the pieces of paper are still lying on the desk, and there's still handwritten notices on the wall, who's on duty tomorrow morning, and things like this. It's quite eerie because there's no outside windows or anything, so there's been no vandalism or theft or anything from inside the system. So that's why we were 6.5. No, you might have said how big were they, and they were different sizes. A couple of them were smaller than the Hiroshima weapon of the Second World War, and some of them were bigger than that.
Dr. Kemm, if South Africa decided to secretly gift some enriched uranium to another country, who would have to authorize its transport or its removal from the facility?
Well, firstly, Chris, I must mention the Pelindaba Treaty. There's a Pelindaba Treaty which is signed by African countries. I think all the African countries, maybe 2 minor ones haven't, but as my memory serves me, that's signed. And the Pelindaba Treaty was the first one in the world that said an area will declare itself a nuclear weapons-free zone. So that came into effect quite a few years ago now. So we already are in the treaty that says we're a weapons-free zone. We also have agreements with the International Atomic Energy Agency, UN, and others, that we will not pursue any weapons of mass destruction in the future, of which weapons that are nuclear is part of it. And I'm on that council, as you mentioned in the beginning. So in principle, what you ask, it would only be authorized at the highest level of government. But in fact, the Council of ISOTOM is there to stop anybody doing it, whether it's the government or private enterprise. Anything of that nature comes through the council. And the council has a look. Is this something that could conceivably be used in a weapon? And if it is, then the council asks for it to be examined, and if there's any suspicion, it will be prohibited.
But could the council be bypassed?
It should not be bypassed, because if the council is bypassed, then the government is breaking its own rules, and that would be serious. But I'd find it very difficult, because to bypass it, somebody would have to physically go to where the material is and take it. And therefore, authorities there would have to open the gates and open the doors and so on and so forth. And they all know that if anything like that happens, they would have to report it to their council and the authority. So you'd have to have a number of people that are in on the criminal aspect, so to speak, to be able to get to the point where it was taken out without anybody's knowledge. I would like to say that I think that's pretty much impossible.
Doctor, what is South Africa's nuclear competence like right now?
It's very good, Chris. Nuclear has been hammered by the extreme Greens for years. But we have got a sophisticated setup here. A lot of people do not believe it, but NEXA, the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, today is like 2,000 people. It's a world leader in the export of nuclear medicine. Every 3 minutes, somebody somewhere in the world is injected with nuclear medicine from Pretoria, and every 3 hours, somebody's life is saved. That's the rate at which we're the only reactor in the world that runs 365 days a year, sending nuclear medicine all over the world. We've got highly sophisticated setups. Coburg runs exceedingly well. It's known to be a model in the world of how to run a nuclear reactor well. It has just achieved a milestone just a few days ago, doing 365 days continuously on reactor number 2, running full bore. And that's very good. It's close to a record, although they're going to deliberately take it offline in a couple of weeks' time for maintenance. So they're not trying to break the record of the continuous run. And we've got lots of nuclear around the country. Numbers of universities have nuclear divisions. And we've got South Africans all over the world, which is one way pleasing to see South Africans in all sorts of places running nuclear operations. Also a bit sad that they've gone there. We need them to come home.
Now, South Africa plans to introduce more nuclear power. How is it going to be done?
Well, the plan at the moment is we need new stations like Coburg's on the coast. Eskom some years ago acquired 5 sites around the east coast and the west coast of South Africa. 2 of them are quite advanced now, got to the point where environmental impact assessments have been essentially done, and there's a whole lot of legality that one has to go through to get to the point where the site is made available to actually build. One is by Jeffreys Bay, it's called Taspint, and there's one next door to Coburg, which is called Danafontein, and both of those are ready to build on. We're planning actually to do both, but it'll be decided which one is first. I personally think Taspint is the better of the two. The idea would be to start building a reactor. When you're part of the way through doing the first couple of reactors there, you then start on the second one. That's the most productive way to do it. Those will come out at some thousands of megawatts. They'll be about 50% bigger, if not twice the size of Coburg. And then over and above that, there's small modular reactors. The thing with the big reactors like Coburg, they need the ocean for cooling. So you constrain basically, you put them on the coastline unless you have a very big inland lake, which we don't have. Russia has a thing like Lake Baikal, which is very clean water, and the water level virtually never changes. South African lakes go up and down a lot, depending on drought conditions. So it's too risky to try to use the Vaal Dam or something like that for a big nuclear reactor. So years ago, it was realized that was the case, and so South Africa became the first country in the world to embark on designing a small modular reactor for commercial use. And that was the initiation of what's known as the Pebble Modular Program. And that was to have a small reactor of about 100 megawatts output that is designed to not use water at all. So it's used helium gas cooling. So the original thoughts were to put them out at a gold mine or to put them at inland towns in the Free State or things like that. Now we've developed to the point of an idea like a cell phone system, having reactors all over like cells, and each reactor has its own connections around it. So you spread them across the country rather than having the big centers and then transmitting along the way. We need both, by the way. I'm not talking against the big ones. You need the big ones where you can, and you push the power inland, like from near Jeffreys Bay into the eastern side of the country, and then there's sites on the other side to push in from the western side, but you need to dot nuclear around. And there's been a lot of interest from African countries as well. We've had quite a few African countries contacting us, and they're showing great interest because clearly they're in the same position. Many of them got no sea at all, and they have no big lakes, and those that they have, the levels change a bit too much, and so on. So there's huge interest in the small reactors.
Now, a PBMR class reactor has also been developed for export. What is happening with that?
Okay, well, what happened was when the project started, it started out of Eskom, in that there was a fellow there who was running around the passages saying, let's build a reactor. And the CEO of the time, who was Alan Morgan, actually spoke to me and said, is this guy crazy? Was he onto something? And after a bit of discussion, it was decided that he was probably onto something and it was worth it to give it a try. And that was Professor David Nichols, who's now the current chairman of NEXA. And so he got backed, and people love to say that the first budget of the first year was 25,000 Rand. And that was the budget they'd essentially got pencils and paper to show that this thing was actually feasible. And it went on to be developed into what was called the pebble bed modular reactor. The pebble means that the fuel is the size of a tennis ball, and uranium's in that. And you put all these balls into a big tank, basically, and you blow the helium gas through it, and it comes out at a temperature of 750, which is very hot. Reactors like Coburg are between 250, 300 normally. So the 750 in itself has got interesting industrial applications. So that's what happened. And the pebble bed got to the point where they started actually building it. The pressure vessel was purchased and arrived in South Africa, and various sub-assemblies were made. Then the 2008 financial crisis hit in the US, and that spread around the world. And a number of the US banks had been backing the South African initiative, not with money, because we didn't need the money at the time, but the psychology of having the big banks saying, we're onto this for export reasons. They all pulled out under the 2008. Then the 2010 soccer was in South Africa, and the government was looking for money for soccer stadiums and so on. And that was when President Zuma pushed President Mbeki out, so a change of president, and President Zuma then said, let's put some of these big things on hold while we think about it. And the PBMR went on hold. Everybody thought it would last a few months, and it lasted until basically 2026. It was taken off hold only just a few weeks ago to go back again. And so that's what the initiation of the whole story was. So South Africa is the world leader in starting the whole idea of commercial SMRs. And Professor Nichols likes to point out that when he spoke in Europe and I spoke in the UK, explaining this, people said, no, South Africans are on the wrong track. You don't want to go small, you want to go bigger and bigger. And we said, no, we have a reason. Now, everybody's climbing on the bandwagon around the world saying, the SMR idea is a good one. In other words, we're right. But nobody's crediting us.
Meanwhile, how involved is local business?
The big business, not at all. It's been sad. I've been hoping that an Anglo-American, a Sasol, somebody like that would realize that this is the future and then put some money in. We find it very difficult. A number of the top CEOs I've spoken to said, oh, we don't want to get involved with the word nuclear. We're scared of that. We'll stay away. But best of luck to you. Best of luck. I hope you keep going, but don't involve us. Now, we need somebody like that. Meantime, a lot of the smaller business, medium and small, are calling us on a regular basis, saying, I supply stainless steel systems, I supply pumping systems, I supply this, this, and this. So we're having numbers of people calling us to say they want to be in the supplier pipeline. So it shows you the amount of business activity that can be triggered once the thing gets rolling. And in the meantime, what we are finding is we've got interest from around the world. We've had a top fellow from Wall Street here a couple of weeks ago, amazed to discover what we're doing right now. We've got one of the richest people from an Asian country who's come to see us. They're talking about substantially financing. We've had people from Europe and quite a few places calling us. And one of the big humps we have to get over is convince them we actually know what we're doing, whereas the US and companies in the UK don't have to do that. I was guest speaker in New York a couple of months ago. 500 people come to the function, and somebody asked me, is there a tarred road between Pretoria and Johannesburg? Somebody else says, is there an airfield in your country big enough for an Airbus to land? In the meantime, we're trying to convince them we know how to build a nuclear reactor, and they don't know if we've got a tarred road. When the visitors come here, they look around and they say, good heavens, this is just so much further advanced than we had any idea, which is not what the Americans have to do. The Americans say we know how to build a pressure vessel. It's okay. We say we know how to build a pressure vessel, and I say, you know what welding is? We've got to convince them that we know the difference between welding the fence poles on the farm and welding a high-integrity pressure vessel for nuclear purposes. So we've got all of that to do, and we're getting, say, no help from the Sassels or from the Anglos or from anybody like that. I've had leading engineering companies say, we're right behind you, sit with the CEOs, right behind you, but don't tell anybody. Don't, because we're scared that the green demonstrators will come and throw things at our front door and so on. But you've got to get past that. You want to find somebody who can see the future together with us. We're getting good support from the government, psychological support. Yeah, they had no money from them either.
Thank you. That was Dr. Kelvin Kemm, the chairman of Stratec Holdings, speaking to Biz News. I'm Steyn. Thank you.